Hello, welcome to the Outside Fence preview show for the Zipping Classic this week at Sandown. I'm your host, Tristan Heffernan. With me, as always, Stewart Brown. Balls, we're going to dive into what's almost the afterthought race of the carnival here at Sandown. Weight for age, 2,400 metres, the Zipping Classic. He was one of your old favourites, wasn't he, Zipping?
I managed to back him a couple of times when I think he won this race 4 times maybe, but I think I was on him at least a couple of times. So, sort of fond memories of backing him in this race. But yeah, certainly we are right at the back end of the carnival now, and there's as well as being a few tied punters about. I think there's a few tied horses on Saturday going around, but hopefully you'll find a little bit of fresh blood and find the winner in the Zipping Classic.
Well, you're not giving it away already there, are you? My favourite memory of Zipping actually was running second in a Cox Plate because I had a decent lick at the Quinella. But there's today's random fact out of the way. Let's talk about Sandown because we haven't dealt with Sandown really on the show. You're a big fan of Sandown. What can we expect from the track this Saturday?
Yep, so they'll be racing on the hillside track on Saturday. Obviously, you've got 2 courses there, the hillside and the lakeside. The hillside is the outer course with the longer straight, so it generally plays pretty fair. As you said, they haven't raced there since, I think it's the 9th of September, so it's had a decent break. The track should be in perfect condition, should be sort of good 3, good 4 range. Rails back in the true. I'll just look early to see sort of if horses can make ground out wide. Usually they can on hillside. It's not too much of an issue, but it's definitely worth just keeping an eye on it since they haven't raced there for a while. And they also can tend to get away from the fence a bit as the meeting goes on. So maybe those later races they might tend to get away. But if the track does firm up a fair bit, then they might start sticking to the inside. But there's a couple of things to keep an eye on as the meeting progresses.
Okay, we're dealing with race 8, so if they do start to get off the fence, it'll be in the hitting zone of this race. Let's go to the market to start with. We've got just the 9 runners and a really even spread here, the odds. Did anything surprise you at first glance here?
Not a massive amount. I was maybe a little bit surprised how short Lord Belvedere was, an old favourite of the show. I thought he might be a little bit longer, but... I think without sort of giving too much away, I still think he's a winning chance in the race. But outside of that, it seemed sort of no huge surprises in the market.
Beauty. Let's move to the map. Nice and big. We've been dealing with some really small riding on the map lately, but first of all, didn't look to be much speed in this at all, which is probably typical of the weight for age races that we deal with these days, especially in the small fields.
Yeah, there isn't much speed here. I've got Lavendi as the leader, which I think he will be, but I would be surprised if he goes along too hard. Now, probably the interesting runners from a map point of view are, first off, Brimham Rocks and Sound, who are both drawn out a bit. I expect them both to head forward. Now, it's probably best case scenario for Sound there that you can slot in 1-1. He may sort of end up outside the leader and Brimham Rocks is 1-1, but I expect both of them to push forward. I suppose the other horses is a little bit of a query on is Avilius. It's sort of settled a long way back in recent runs, but sort of the small field drawn not too bad there in 5. Maybe he could look to settle closer and be sort of in that first 4 or 5. And then Attorney... can race closer, but I'm not sort of sure where it's going to slot in from that gate 8. So maybe it sort of has to end up being ridden negatively and does go back to last. But there's a few of those positions up for grabs.
Okay, do you think we'll be dealing with horses? We're looking for the horses with the sprint, or do you think the pace might come into the race sort of earlier as a few of these on paces like Brimham Rocks or Sound, they might try and lift the tempo a bit earlier than usual?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it's a total sprint home. I would have thought, it's in the best interest of a few of those on pace to sort of make it somewhat of a test. To be honest, I'm not really concerned about the map as far as sort of which horses will get the best chance and those sort of things. I think all horses, based on the tempo of this race, will tend to get their chance.
Okay, let's dive into the lead-up races for the main chances. We can cover most of the field here with 4 lead-ups. We're going to kick it off with the race favourite, Avilius. We're going to look at his lead-up run here in the Caulfield Cup. Now, Avilius is obviously coming through the Melbourne Cup. One thing I should have touched on at the start when talking about this race is where the past winners have come through. Last year's winner, Southern France, came off a 19th in the Melbourne Cup at $26. The Taj Mahal won twice, once backing up from the McKinnon, and then the other time came through the Caulfield Cup, Moonee Valley Cup path. And then the two previous winners, Beautiful Romance, was 7th in the Melbourne Cup and then came back to the Zipping Classic and won. And Who Shot the Barman was a quite an unlucky 11th in the Melbourne Cup, and then he came back to the 2400 of the Zipping Classic and won as well. So there's definitely there's no real pot on coming back from the Melbourne Cup if you're a horse suited by doing so. One point I would make is horses like Southern France and Beautiful Romance, their Melbourne Cup run was their first run in Australia, so they obviously still had a bit left in their preparation, which Avilius might not be the case with. We'll talk about his Caulfield Cup run first, and then we'll get on to his Melbourne Cup run where he was well beaten. But this was on wet ground, which we know that Avilius loves, and this was a really superb run, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great run. He's there in the all blue, sort of making his run through the middle of the pack. But you'll notice here as they get to the home turn, he finds a bit of trouble when looking for a run. And you definitely could make an argument that he should have finished a lot closer in this race and possibly should have placed at least. You see him sort of getting knocked over there, getting squeezed up between horses, and then finishes off well once he gets into the clear. Now, obviously, the big thing on Saturday, he's likely to get back onto firm ground. Now, he's not hopeless on firm ground, but I definitely think he prefers the softer going. He's probably got the class over this field, but the big queries for me are the firm ground, and also this would be 6th run for the prep. It's sort of a stage of his prep he hasn't got to recently, so whether he's had enough by now, and this is very much an afterthought, is probably a big query. But yeah, he's sort of favourite in the early market. I'd say he's a winning chance, but as favourite, he's sort of a horse I'm looking to go around.
Okay, let's talk about his Melbourne Cup run, which was obviously on a good 3 surface. He went around basically unwanted $61. He settled a long way back and never got into the race. Do you take anything out of that with looking towards this race?
Not a huge amount. I don't really think he's a 3,200 metre horse, and as you said, he was sort of back and wide and never really got into the race. And plus, that was run on a good track. I suppose the tiny little worry would be that he's had that run. It was a fast run Melbourne Cup as well, so how much that's taken out of him would be some query. And obviously that's sort of another run he's had in the prep as well. So all those things combined definitely are little queries, I think, in the race. And that's sort of why, as favourite, at this stage I'll be going around him.
Are you surprised that Damien Oliver takes the ride?
I suppose a little bit. He doesn't ride a lot for Godolphin. John Allen's been doing a lot of the riding for Godolphin down here and has been on Avilius a bit of late. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if John's suspended or not. But, I suppose it is a little surprising to see Ollie on. But I suppose looking through the rest of the field, there doesn't look to be I suppose Princess Jenni's ridden a bit but didn't ride last start. But there aren't sort of many other horses that he generally rides in the race.
Okay, is there... Say we were to get some freak rain, your friends at Bomb got things wrong, would he be a clear favourite for you?
Yeah, I think if, say, for instance, we did get rain and it went into the soft range, I'd say he's a clear favourite. Okay,
cool. But, yes, that doesn't look like it's going to happen, but like we said, you never know. So I'll give him some chance as well. Despite the good ground, I was surprised actually when I looked back through his form, how good his form was on good ground. I sort of had it in my mind that he was a soft tracker. I think that probably goes back to a couple of Australian Cups where he's failed when he's been well in the market on reasonably firmer ground, but he's won a few times on good 3 tracks, which really surprised me. For me, it's more coming back from the Melbourne Cup at the end of a long preparation. That's more my concern than the firm going. But yeah, the wet ground would really be much more advantageous to Avilius. Let's go across now and watch the Hotham Stakes. This was won by Ash Run. We've got 3 runners coming through this race who are all in the market for this Zipping Classic. We've got Sound, who's third on the inside there in the purple. Just outside him there, outside the leader there is Brimham Rocks. And then Future Score is that him underneath Shabao there looking to get out?
Yeah, in the dark blue cap.
In the OTI racing the blue and the yellow hoops. So with Avilius favourite, these 3 are basically next 3 in the betting along with Lord Belvedere. Let's start with Sound because he went very close to winning this race. He's been knocking on the door a lot here, Sound, but just can't get over the line.
Yeah, he's had an excellent spring at this sort of level without winning. Now, he, to me, pretty much had every chance here. Possibly got held up a little bit too long in the straight, but so did get out now and sort of hit the front and probably did look home for a lot of the straight before being nabbed by Ash Run late on. Sort of there was nothing wrong with the run for Sound. It was a good honest run, sort of what you'd expect from the horse. The start prior, he definitely had excuses in the Moonee Valley Cup where he was sort of held up on the inside when a lot of horses were making runs out wide. So he had a genuine excuse there. I suppose a little worry with Sound is that he actually hasn't won since he's been in Australia, so his last win was back in 2018 in Germany. So that's, I suppose, some query that he hasn't been able to sort of win a race, but a lot of his runs have been sort of at higher level races. I suppose the other little query is sort of the outside gate in this small field can be a bit tricky for a horse like Sound. I suppose worst case scenario, it probably ends up outside the leader. But if it's got plans of sort of slotting in with cover, then that becomes a little bit more tricky. But does have Jamie Carr in the saddle to do her best.
You took the words out of my mouth there. I thought you were going to say Jamie Carr's going to have trouble slotting in, which is uncharacteristic for you. I've got a slight query on Sound. What are your thoughts on this horse? He's had 3 2,500 metre runs. He stays at 2,400 metres again. There's only 2 weeks since this run here in the Hotham. Is there a chance, do you think, that once these horses have a number of runs over these trips, they start to get a bit more dour and maybe not quite have the dash in the legs that an up-and-comer may have in this race?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I suppose the thing favouring Sound out of this race was it was quite a slowly run race, so it was a bit of a sprint home, and so I suppose it wouldn't have sort of taken too much out of its legs, and it still should be at least a little bit spry. But as we mentioned when we were looking at the map, Sound is probably one of those on-pace horses that would probably be in its best interest to make it like at least some sort of a test, not a complete sprint home. But yeah, you'd leave that in the capable hands of Jamie Carr. I'm sure she'll get it right.
Okay, speaking of horses that probably want to test, and also of horses staying at this trip for their 4th run, we've got Brimham Rocks, who ran 3rd there in the Hotham. Did a bit of work early to be on speed and boxed on pretty well, but do you think he's well, we don't really have to look for class here at Weight for Age. It's a bit of a different beast, the 2,400 metre Weight for Age race at this time of the carnival, but do you think he's up to this race, Brimham Rocks?
He's thereabouts. He's a very honest type in these type of races. He generally sort of races close to the speed. He's never far away at the finish. He doesn't win a lot these days. He's sort of always thereabouts without winning a fair bit. I think his last win was in Brisbane. As you mentioned here, he was sort of 3 wide, no cover for the first 800 metres of the race, worked to sit outside the leader. So there's a fair bit of merit in his run. To just get nosed out of 3rd position there. He's another one who sort of is thereabouts in this race, and he's obviously he maps to sort of be on speed, and which might be in the right spot given the possible tempo of the race. But yeah, he's definitely a winning chance, but I probably won't be on him come Saturday.
Okay, his win in the end of his last prep was 2,400 metres there in the Tattersalls Cup in Brisbane on a good 3 track. So if the track does get really firm, then this is a horse we don't have to be concerned about.
No, a good track is fine for Brimham Rocks. He's a fairly honest customer, and he's quite versatile as well.
Okay, the third runner coming through this race is Future Score. There he is getting home, actually dead heated for third there with Brimham Rocks. Now we're talking about horses having their fourth run at this 1.5 mile trip for the prep. This horse's first go at 1.5 mile this prep. This is only its fourth run this time in, so he's the fresh horse on the scene.
Yeah, and that's what makes me a bit keen on Future Score in this race. A lot of these horses who he's meeting have sort of been up all spring. They've run in a lot of races around this distance. They're possibly getting a bit tired. Whereas Future Score, this is his fourth run in. Last start was his first go at this sort of distance range, this preparation, so he should be really ready to fire on Saturday. And this does look a bit of a target race for him. You'll notice in this race here, he did get held up in the early part of the straight, which probably, don't know whether it cost him winning the race, but he probably should have finished a little bit closer at least. And so, yeah, his win prior in the Caulfield Cup was quite impressive, sort of sitting back in the field on a fast tempo and won quite easily there. And he looks to be sort of a stayer on the rise. His record in this distance range, sort of at lower grade races, is excellent as well. They've taken their time with this horse, getting him through the grades. So, yeah, he looks a great chance on Saturday for mine.
Okay, if we say this is, outside of Avilius, this is probably the strongest form heading into this race. He doesn't have to improve much to be around the mark with these other main chances. And, yeah, being his fourth run this prep, he's definitely open to more improvement, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I'd think he'd at least have to have some improvement in him coming out of his first run in this distance range. Whereas a horse like Sound and I suppose Brimham Rocks too, they've been up for a while. As you mentioned, been running at this distance range for a while. They pretty much sort of are what they are at this stage. Whereas, yeah, Future Score he has a bit of scope to him.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on now to another horse that has got a bit of scope. You've been identifying this horse for us ever since the show started, just sort of getting off the back end of the winter, and that's Lord Belvedere. Now, his last run in, I think it was the Bart Cummings, was a bit disappointing when he started. Interestingly, he started $5.50, and Sound went round at $15. Now, Sound ran second in the Bart Cummings, behind Persan, who obviously ran a cracking race in the Melbourne Cup. Lord Belvedere got beat about 3 lengths. Pulled up lame. Jockey reported the track was too firm for him. He only got beat 3 lengths, but just to show what he's capable of, we're going to go 2 starts back to the very special Kids Open Handicap, and he actually beats Persan here over the 2,500 metres as well. Obviously, this was a good 4 track, but if we got a really firm track, that would have to be a concern on his last run there in the Bart Cummings.
Yeah, it definitely would be. And I suppose the thing to note with this good 4 track on this day, this was race 1 on the day as well. So obviously it would have been, I suppose, may even been on sort of the worst side of the good 4 anyway. So, yeah, the big thing for Lord Belvedere will be sort of the track conditions. It's not going to be a super warm day on Saturday, so that's probably in his favour. He's got the synthetic hoof filler going on, which is some little concern. Like, it's not the end of the world as far as I'm concerned, synthetic hoof filler compared to, say, something like the bar plates, but he's obviously got some kind of feet problems, and the firm ground definitely exacerbates that. So, if the track can stay in that good 4 range, that would be great for him. I don't think it's the end of the world if it's upgraded to good 3, but definitely you'd want to see sort of how quick the track is racing before you sort of have a firm commitment into Lord Belvedere.
Okay, this was his 3rd win in a row over this sort of distance range at Flemington. It does look a really suitable track for him. Sandown is a very big track as well, though, so do you think he's losing much by going to Sandown here?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. As you mentioned, yeah, there's a long run in at Sandown, sort of quite similar to Flemington in that regard. Obviously, there's the downhill run at Sandown before they get to the straight, so it can be a little bit tricky for horses going there for the first time. Another big factor with Lord Belvedere is he races very well on the fresh side. This win here was off a sort of, I think, a 40-odd day break, and he goes into Saturday's race as well off a 40-odd day break since his run in the Bart Cummings. So he's definitely got that on his side. He's got his regular jockey, Ben Melham, in the saddle as well, who knows the horse well and rides him well. So as I said when we put up the market at the start of the show, I was a little bit surprised sort of how firm he was in the market, but I'm definitely not ruling him out as a winning chance.
Okay, I was going to bring that up. It can turn people off to see sort of that 6-week break in between runs for these stayers, but already twice this year we've seen him win off a similar break, so don't let that put you off Lord Belvedere.
No, I actually think it's a positive with the horse, more so than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, all right. We're going to look at one more race now, and this is the Bendigo Cup, which was won by Princess Jenni. You can see her there in the blue colours. She's had a beautiful run just behind the speed. She's in those blue blinkers there. She's about to peel off. Another interesting runner coming through this race is Pondus, who we saw get narrowly beaten in the Queen Elizabeth. He's out the back there in the Lloyd Williams colours coming to the outside. Obviously, he was a mighty effort in this race, but Princess Jenni was able to hold him off, but now she steps up in grade again to the Zipping Classic here.
Yeah, she was given a beautiful ride here. This was the first go at 2,400. She was given a great ride, came to the centre of the track here and was too good. Obviously, you mentioned Pondus was quite an unlucky runner in this race, and I think without doubt should have beaten her. Yeah, and I don't think this was, outside of, say, Pondus, I don't think this was the strongest Bendigo Cup I've ever seen, and Saturday's race is definitely a step up, and this is, I'd say a race like the Hotham was definitely a better race than this. I think Princess Jenni's sort of more an outside chance on Saturday. Definitely won't be a bet for me. But, yeah, you probably can't... The fact that she's one start for one win at 2,400, and she's shown that ability this run here. She's a hard horse to put the pen through, but yeah, from a betting perspective, I won't be interested.
We talk about Future Score as being a horse on the up. She fits a similar bill here. She probably gets a really soft one run again from gate one. The weight for age conditions don't suit her though, do they?
No, they don't. As I've mentioned a few times, I'm sort of not a massive weights person, but they probably mean something at 2,400 once we're here now. And, the conditions sort of, I suppose the weight conditions are something that are against her.
All right. I tend to agree with you there on Princess Jenni just being outclassed, but yeah, I'm not totally writing her off. Just she's on the up and she's going to get that box seat run. So, but she's pretty well found. I'll bring up the market again. We can just now that we've been through the main chances, we can just mention there she's sort of that $10 mark. Another horse around that $10 mark that we haven't talked about is Attorney. We've got no lead-up footage of this horse to show you. He did run fourth in the St Ledger up there at Randwick in a race where Brimham Rocks ran second. So there wasn't much between the two runners. Can you draw any line through that run with Brimham Rocks to give this horse a chance at all, Bowles?
Well, I definitely think on that occasion Brimham Rocks had the tougher run and beat home Attorney. So, if I'm looking at those two in this race, I'd definitely give the points to Brimham Rock. Attorney has had a barrier trial since in Sydney over 1,200 metres and sort of did, I suppose, what you'd expect, or was somewhat impressive in winning that barrier trial. But as I said, it was sort of a distance barrier trial over 1,200 metres, so it's hard to draw too much from it as far as I'm concerned. Another thing I did mention with the map, when we looked at the map for this race too, I think that gate 8 looks a bit tricky for Attorney. It's possibly going to need a bit of luck early in the race if it wants to find a spot around midfield. Otherwise, I can see it sort of settling right back. So that's, I suppose, another negative for it. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if Attorney won this race.
Right, we'll cross him off. I'll tell you what, though, the first time I back a horse in a 2,400 metre race because it won a 1,200 metre trial, I'll just about giving it away if that's the reason I'm backing the horse. Two more to go through here. Lavendi, huge odds. Doesn't seem much of the horse that we used to know of Lavendi. Can't really find him.
No, he's very hard to find. He was a bit disappointing in the Moonee Valley Cup last start. Did pull up with a bit of an issue, but I'd want to see him sort of win a race before I entertain him. He does look the leader here and should get it fairly comfortably, so that's probably one thing he's got going for him.
And the other one is Scarlet Dream down the bottom there. Can you sell us on this horse at all?
I can't really. She's had quite a busy spring, running a fair bit the last sort of month and a bit. But she did have some traffic problems last week in the Queen Elizabeth, so she's on the 7-day backup as well. So I suppose that's a line you could draw for her to try and make a case. But I don't really think she's good enough.
No, she's another not suited there by the weight for age conditions. Let's move across now into our tips. I'm always a bit reluctant when we find the same horse, although it's probably a good thing. We both landed on Arcadia Queen last week. We all know how that ended up. It seems we're both with the up-and-comer here, Balls.
Yeah, I was sort of drawn to Future Score quite easily in this race, given he does look like he's got a bit of scope to him. I've liked his last 2 runs, or even all 3 runs of this prep, I think, have been decent. For this looks like somewhat of a target race for him. Sort of he should be better for that last run, staying at the 2400 or thereabouts. He looks a good bet in this race to me.
Okay, and you're interested in Sound? What circumstances could we see you put a few shekels on that horse?
Yeah, Sound's probably a horse that maybe if he drifted a bit in the market, I could back him or maybe even just save on him. I think he's going very well this prep without winning. You could maybe make half an excuse for him last start. He did beat Future Score home as well. J Car rides, as we mentioned. So, he's definitely a horse that interests me in the race.
Okay, I'm also with Future Score as the up-and-comer here, and I'm somewhat interested in Brimham Rocks if he gets a bit forgotten by the market. I do like backing these horses that do a lot of work early in a race at their next start, because I think that can get overlooked at times. But it looks like we're heading to the races with our money for Future Score, Balls.
Does look that way. Okay,
this is most likely our last preview of the spring. This could be our last show until the better races start to get going in autumn. So thanks to everyone who's watched I guess we could call it our first season. Balls, thanks for all your hard work as always. If you do like the show, as always, give us a like, subscribe, give us a comment, get involved in the comments. There's always good discussion going on there, or a bit of love on Twitter and Facebook. It never hurts as well. Good luck. Hopefully we see Future Score get the chocolates on Saturday. And Balls, don't know when the next show will be, but I will see you then.
Thanks, Hef. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. See you later.